Hi everyone. What I want to share with you today is about this past week of my life. I live in Canada. We've had an extremely cold spell here in Eastern Ontario. It caused my pipes to freeze in 3 separate spaces, and 2 of these burst. What I want to talk about today is how I've addressed the burst pipes. I do want to put this in context. I've been using an electric wheelchair for my mobility since 2009. These burst pipes have likely been the hardest thing that I've had to deal with over the past 6 years. It's even been harder than the failed surgeries that I've had, and surgeries that haven't brought the expected results. We really rely on water for cleaning the dishes, flushing the toilet, drinking water, washing the floors. There's also water used in the preparation of meals. Thankfully, 2 friends that believe in me locally have been a wonderful support during this past week and have helped me get the water finally back on today. I'm making this video without writing out a script for myself first, so I want to ask that if you do have any questions for me, that you would leave it in the comments, and I will endeavor to do my best to answer you. I have had contact previously with the building department where I live. The building inspectors have always been excellent with me. I've had virtually 0 problems. They're always willing to help and provide practical guidance and the steps taken when needing to complete a project. If you're unsure, I would most sincerely encourage you to approach them. If you find yourself in a situation like me where there's not the finances to hire a plumber, they are the people that can provide the know-how for a simple repair. And I would never underestimate this. In fact, when I've dealt with the building department and building inspectors, they've provided the most practical tips at how to do the work. If you come to them humbly, they are very, very helpful. And you should not fail or be fearful of the inspectors. So, I want to begin by saying that I did not know that the pipe had burst, nor had I expected it to have burst where it did. This started in my basement, where I suddenly did not have hot water at my kitchen sink. So this was my first indication there was a problem. My basement is like a crawl space. The utility connections are exposed down there. So to permanently fix the basement, there is a reflective wrap around pipe insulation that may be installed. I'm going to do this and increase the R value. That's the insulation rating used here in Canada, the R value of the pipes, so it's similar to outside of homes. I do need to caution you, there is a restriction on how close insulation may be to the hot water tank when your hot water tank is made out of or powered by natural gas. You don't want to put insulation so close to it that it will catch fire. You need to check with your local building codes to find out how close it may be. In practical terms, water expands when it's heated. So the first 12 inches to 16 inches or 30 centimeters to approximately 45 centimeters is going to be hot most of the time, just because of water heating up and pushing it to the out valve of your hot water tank. So there isn't as much of a concern of the pipe freezing just above the tank. The reflective surface of insulation adds a high R value. So it's going to mean first going to T intersections, that is where the pipe branches off but then continues on, and insulating these junctions, and then going back and doing the pipes around these intersections so it's consistently done. There is insulation that fits on pipes. It's the same idea as putting on a jacket for a person. I'm going to not use these and solely rely on the pipe insulation that has the tin foil surface followed by a layer of bubbles like the kind you'd find in a padded envelope, followed by a second bubble type of insulation reflective surface, almost like a bubble sandwich. These are usually found in the building materials department of the big box stores. And I'm going to wrap it around multiple times. So let's say that it has an R rating of 10. That means I'm going to do 3 wraparounds to give my pipes R30 protection. It depends on what store you shop at with what product they use, but I'm going to go up to R30 on my pipes to avoid a future freeze in the basement. Now, I'm a single man, so it's not like there's hot water coursing through the pipes near as frequently as if this was a house of 6 adults or 4 adults and some younger children. So this is what I feel is needed to avoid the future freezing. I'm also going to check if the windows in the basement need the added insulation bats for the winter. I do have my basement vented during the summer. You don't want to block the air or allow the air to go stale down in the basement if it's not finished. So you need to think about the effects of what you're doing during the summertime. The pipes aren't going to mind being insulated during the summer months. And the bad of insulation is not going to affect me because the vent is still in there. In fact, I've got a bathroom vent set up down the basement if you want to know what I'm talking about. I have it on a timer set to vent my basement for 1 hour in every 6 hours. I don't have the funds to afford a dehumidifier during the winter. This is how I take the moist air and keep it out of the basement. You need to do something. Dark, damp spaces cause mold to grow. You don't want to do that. You also need to be mindful of and not go near the natural gas pipes in the basement. These could be cast iron. Typically when they're in the copper form, they have a yellow sleeve over top of them. If you don't know what is natural gas, have someone come to you that is qualified and educated. You can do yourself a lot of harm by going near these things, as well as void your house insurance. You only want to do what you are comfortable doing and knowledgeable doing. For insulating the pipes with the insulation I've talked about with the reflective surface, there is a matching tape that goes with this, and it maintains the continuity of the reflective surface. That's what you use for the joins. So that's step one. Now, I did not know that the water froze in my pipes in 2 additional areas of my home. One of these was the garden shutoff valve just past it that feeds the garden hose. This leak was after the shutoff valve. There is a permanent repair that needs to take place. The leak that's happened exposed that there was no vapor barrier or adequate insulation to prevent the pipe from freezing. This is an older home, so now that I know it's a problem, I'm going to properly fix it this summer by removing the drywall and doing a complete repair. There is something called PEX plumbing. It's made out of plastic. When ice forms in copper plumbing, you can almost always count on a burst occurring to the copper plumbing. That is where the copper cracks, almost like a split, like a minus sign, or sometimes the burst is more the shape of a dime or a nickel coin. I'm going to replace the garden hose plumbing with the PEX connection and move the shutoff valve underneath my kitchen sink. Now, having said that, it's going to be a pretty big job to do it. I'm going to have to take off the drywall. There's going to be a little bit of soldering to put the transition piece from copper to PEX. However, the PEX plumbing tends to be more resilient in the event of a freeze ice forming on the inside. With my physical disability, I can't easily access the current shutoff valve. I'm putting it where I can do it. I don't have very much mobility, but I would have the ability to empty the pipe if the shutoff valve was underneath the sink. And I'm going to do it in such a way that it's easy for me to reach, and I'm going to put it where it's most easiest for my person. I do have the experience doing the renovations. Long before I was in the wheelchair, I was heavily involved in these things. So that's one plan. You need to get a shutoff valve that allows you to drain the water out of the pipe section that you're shutting off. Then this will prevent the ice from forming in the pipe that goes to the garden hose connection. There's a very specific shutoff valve for this purpose, and it has an arrow on the shutoff valve showing which way it's to be installed, so when you open the little side door on it that lets the water drain out, it's draining the pipe, not letting the water come from the house and just flooding through there continually. So when I said a few minutes ago that you need to know what you're doing, you really do need to do so. So that will address and bring a permanent resolution to that burst. The second burst occurred in the hot water pipe that goes to the built-in dishwasher. I don't have a built-in dishwasher. In another video, I showed how I use a countertop dishwasher because I'm able to have this high enough up that it's easy for me to use when accessing my wheelchair. So for this one, I'm just going to cap it off under the sink. Now, having said that, this was the pipe that burst, and we spent the week troubleshooting to get it watertight again. It's not safe to solder in its present position. There's way too much of a tight space and a very real possibility that the house would be set on fire if a blowtorch was used. So to temporarily cap it, all I did was buy something called a shark bite and cap. A shark bite is something like a compression fitting valve. There's no soldering needed to put it on. You just cut the pipe and then push it on in place, and then push it a second time into its complete length. Then it grabs a hold of the pipe and you're watertight. The reason I could use an end cap is the water supply line only went to the dishwasher, so I don't need that pipe there. If the pipe was to go through and onto somewhere else, there are various shark bite products. One of them would allow you to use a pass through, like a joiner shark bite, where you would remove a small length of the copper pipe that burst and then push it into both ends for a temporary repair. You should not solder unless you know what you're doing and you can do so safely. You can void your house insurance by soldering if you set your house on fire. There's also a number of building codes that come into play when you're dealing with plumbing. Generally, grandfathered in is accepted during a repair, but if you're starting fresh, then you rely on the new codes. This is why I've talked about contacting the building department and finding out from them the most practical way. And I really do sincerely mean it when I say that they have been helpful to me in the past. So I've used a shark bite bit end cap to seal my pipes and allow my water to come back on. I want to highlight that I tried having a patch used first. The patch did not work. Patches are hard to get right the first time. I'm not saying they won't work, but I spent $18 on the patch just to throw it out and turn to the shark bite end cap. And I would certainly encourage you to save the money on a patch and go directly to the shark bite end cap or the appropriate shark bite bit. You can find these, or I found mine at Home Depot. You can go on the Shark Bite website to see where they are sold locally. Now, when the water got wet, there was the issue of dealing with the cleanup. The type of insulation brand known as Roxol is able to take moisture, and then once it dries out, it still retains its R value. That is, it still retains its insulation qualities. Fiberglass insulation, on the other hand, if it gets wet, it goes moldy, it's done, and needs to be replaced. If you're watching this video because you've had a burst pipe, you need to go make sure that you've not got fiberglass insulation wet. You don't want to be causing yourself health problems from insulation mold. You also need to get the correct vapor barrier and tape that joins the vapor barrier into place depending on what your repair is. The pipe, of course, should be on the warm side of the vapor barrier. So this is what has been done so far. In the summer months, I will be permanently repairing this. That is, removing the drywall, removing the cupboards, and then going at it to remove the pipe for the built-in dishwasher and changing over the pipe for the garden hose. One other note, I have a sump pump in my basement, so it took up the water that was being leaked. Now, I want to suggest to you that you change your sump pump once the warranty is up on it. Like, typically they have a 3-year warranty. My house requires a sump pump or the basement will flood as soon as the motor burns out. You want to avoid submerging your furnace, hot water tank, and any electricals or finished basement in water. So I would suggest that you proactively replace your sump pump once it's no longer under warranty. This is one piece of equipment that, for where I live and the geology of where I live, is absolutely essential. Without it, my basement would constantly be flooded. I know this is a lot to take in, and I know it's a lot to deal with. If you work through it a step at a time, I think you'll get through it. Thank you very much for the time that you spent with me today. Bye for now.